Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franson here, co-host of the Top Business Leaders Show, where we feature CEOs, entrepreneurs, and top leaders in the business world. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses reach their dream relationships and connect with more clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships, and get ROI through done-for-you podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships, there's no better way to do it than to profile the people and companies you admire on your own podcast. To learn more, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. Nancie McDonnell Ruder is an executive coach, leadership advisor, and marketing consultant with more than 25 years of experience. She began her career at the Leo Burnett Company and in 2002 founded Noetic Consultants, working with clients such as Samsung, Pepsi, Nike, Marriott, the Mayo Clinic, and Discovery Incorporated. Nancie serves as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, her undergraduate alma mater, and is the creator of Noetic Art and Science Assessment, as well as the author of the book, How Senior Marketers Scale the Heights. She's an active member of Chief and Vistage and has served on various nonprofit boards. Nancie, thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, as we get started here, you founded Noetic Consultants more than 20 years ago. Tell me more about it and kind of give me just kind of a broad view of who you guys are and what you guys do.
Sure. I always like to say, because it's been 20 years, I don't want people doing the math on that. So I started when I was about 10 years old.
Of course.
Right. Wonder child. So Noetic is a consultancy in the marketing space. There's a lot of, different offerings out there. As a consultancy, we do marketing and leadership consulting. So we're not an agency. We don't do external brand expression, advertising or PR out in the market space. Rather, we do consumer research, brand strategy, training, and executive coaching. So we're really in the skilling up in the behind the scenes. We like to say we strengthen brands and we strengthen the people that build the brands. And we do this in both B2B and B2C. So we're working to really create that strength from the inside out in an effort to help companies really accelerate their growth, build their internal marketing strength so that those external efforts, both, inside the organization culturally and skill-wise, and then externally. So services-wise, we do both qualitative and quantitative research. We do a lot of audience definition, all kinds of branding, whether that's architecture, brand positioning, rebranding, refining branding. And then in training and coaching, coaching is one-to-one, and then training is one-to-many. And we do both live and virtual in that space. So that can be a full curriculum that we deliver virtually, because when teams are geographically dispersed, or we do a lot of in-person as well.
Tell me about your the values and approach that Noetic kind of takes, and maybe what differentiates you from that standpoint.
Yeah, I do think that our values are a really key point of our distinction. It really drives how we work more than what we offer, because our values, which we just take really seriously, we talk about them all the time, daily, if not weekly. And it's something that guides how we behave. It's how we think and we behave with clients. It's how we think and behave with one another. So I won't list them all for you. There's 7. I'll just talk about 1 or 2. Dynamic positivity is one, and this is around not dynamic positivity like everything's fine when it's not, but really rolling up our sleeves and being constructive at all times with one another, with our clients, getting really curious about challenges as opposed to, ever spiraling down the rabbit hole when people are, stressed out about the complex challenges. We really need to be constructive problem solvers, and we do look at the glass half full and stay curious about the opportunities. The second one I'll mention, which really is kind of like the value that stands above all the other ones, is helping kindness first. And what that's about is being really helpful and kind to one another and in the market. So we do a lot of informal helping and supporting of all the people in our network. We do that because we believe that it's good to do. It puts just really good karma out into the world. We also have seen that it's good for business. So many times when we get the work that we do, it's through warm referrals and repeat customers who come back, who really appreciate how constructive we are. I would also say from a distinction standpoint, which of course, that's the business we're in. We're helping organizations figure out their distinction. Our particular mix of services is rather distinct. You will find consultancies that do, just research or do research and brand. It's rare, if I don't know that I've seen it, to have the combination of the research, brand, and then the training component. So around the people and the brands together. And the reason why we have that is it really was born of clients looking to us toward being equipped. So, it's not just good enough to have those good answers strategically, but how will you deploy it within the organization and get everybody on board so that everyone can be authentically living the brand because they really understand to their core what the brand is truly about and they're embodying it. So I think in terms of our service offering and how we go about building brands and the people themselves around those brands is a big part of our distinction.
Has that training always been a part of Noetic? I mean, if I were young and
great question. No. So in our 21 years, it came about 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
And it's something that we kept getting asked. And so we got trained in training. And we had done it in, I would say, in an informal manner because we always had done a lot of facilitation. But it was increasingly becoming obvious to me that it was something that people were looking to us for. And so we went and got that expertise and then launched it.
If I were young and starting a company and we had this specialty and then the clients wanted me to teach them my specialty, I guess I might be a little threatened by that or something, like your lack of knowledge is my job security, but you found that to be the opposite.
I think that it is a delicate balance at times. I often will say to clients, and we always have to feel out whether or not they understand why we're there. Mm-hmm. I often will say to clients, we are here to inspire, educate, and equip where you need it and not where you don't. So when an outside partner gets brought in our case, at least, I'll just speak for myself, it's usually some combination of, we might have the skill set you have, but we don't have the bandwidth to do the work. Or we don't have the skill set and we want you to help us, get it. And sometimes it's just having that third party objectivity. I can't, as the leader, do this work. I need someone who can come in and bring best practices from other organizations. And sometimes it's a combination of the both. But I will tell you, to your question, we have had moments over the years that you can tell when a person feels threatened. Are you here to get me fired? Are you here and it's going to make me look bad? And when those moments happen, we really try to address it head on, but very empathetically, and help them understand that that is absolutely not why we're there. We're there to equip and empower them and to help them where they need and not where they don't. And usually when you have that pointed conversation, people are taken aback, but they tend to believe you because you are addressing it head on. Maybe you would be more vague about it if you were there to, displace them. So that does happen sometimes.
When you, back in 2002, when you started the company, prior to that, what had you been doing and what kind of led you to break out on your own?
Yeah. So back then, I'll back up one before then. So I started my marketing career out of my MBA at University of Chicago and concentrated in marketing and finance, actually, because at University of Chicago, you can't not do finance there because that's what they specialize in. So I knew I wanted to do marketing, but I did the finance anyway. So then I went to a large ad agency in Chicago called Leo Burnett. that's part of the Publicis group today. And I did that for about 11, 12 years. And it was right out of that I started Noetic. So what happened was somewhat situational, actually. So I made a move for family reasons from Chicago back to the DC area. DC was where I had lived for undergrad. And when I got here, I actually initially, and it was very avant-garde at the time, I commuted back and forth. My job was still in Chicago and I lived here. Nobody was doing that back then, but I was doing that. Very much more common today. And then, I ultimately determined that was not sustainable in the long term to be doing that every week. And so, I really looked around, and in the DC market, at least at that time, I didn't really see a lot of opportunities to do what I loved best, which was really in the research and strategy space. So I decided to take on some project work and just see how that would go. My very first client was my old employer, who hired me straight away. And I like to say, some people talk about angel investors. I think there's angel clients. Like when you're trying to start a business, one of the things I say to people is get a client. Because when you get a client, then if there's a there, and you also can pay the bills because someone's paying you. And then you start to have those stories and those experiences that can help you then, leverage to sell more and add more value to others. So it started out of really, that like necessity breeds invention. I was like, I need to work. I want to work. I don't really see it here, so I'll make it up.
So which came first for you, the client or the job or the business? Or did they come together?
It was almost like completely together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't work for just a couple months to get settled, and in between. And so I'm looking and I'm thinking, and then I had this angel client who was just knocking on the door. And I was like, yeah, this seems like what I'm doing. I do think it was probably 2 years in when I said, okay, this is actually, I think, sustainable, and let's really lean into making it, a business and not just project work. And that's when I got a little bit more, organized about it all.
So you kind of had, you started the business and had a client that kind of came together. What about your second client? Was that more difficult to get, or how did you kind of like build your client base?
Yeah, great question. So I built my client base slowly over time, but then I watched it at a certain point, like that flywheel. I watched it start to exponentiate at a certain point. So in those early years, I did a lot of networking and a lot of help and kindness in the market, and getting the word out and really staying close to so many of my former colleagues. So in addition to my former employer, I did a handful of efforts for some smaller companies, a couple nonprofits, and then I got significant work from Discovery. And for many years, Discovery was an anchor client for us. We did research and brand work for them on every one of the networks. So this is, pre-merger acquisition. So at the time they had about 12 networks. And for many years, they were a mainstay for us. And that enabled me to do that diversification, to start to, add on significant other organizations. And that's when I started to see that flywheel really start to take off.
So how did you kind of, work your way up to getting, Discovery is a big name, but you've also, as I mentioned in your introduction, Pepsi, Nike, Marriott, Mayo Clinic. How did you kind of make them aware of you?
Relationships. It really all came down to relationships. So one of the things in this business that is really good to avoid, if you can, is competitive bidding. Not that you can avoid it completely, but competitive bidding is it lessens your chance of getting any particular engagement. And so the warmer the relationship is from the start, the better chance that someone is going to have that faith to hire you. So I could probably draw a map when I think about Marriott, Nike, Samsung, Georgetown University, all the different clients we've had over the years, back to the relationships. Many of them started at my former employer. Many of them came about through discovery. Then those people go on to other places. And then as the years go by, you start getting referred by people who know people that Mm-hmm. So it starts getting, more out there. And sometimes, truly just through our marketing and, being out in the marketplace. But I do think that we got in with many of those big names because of the warm relationships. And then, once you have that experience, it is valued. Big organizations realize that how to come into a big organization, get up the learning curve, and add value. So I think there is a trust factor that comes in there.
What have been maybe some of the biggest turning points then in the lifespan of Noetic consultants?
Yeah, 21 years is a long time. I think one really significant turning point was about, I kind of look at the company in chapters. When we were probably 10 or so years old, mm-hmm. We took on a system called EOS. I don't know if you're familiar, or for listeners who aren't familiar, it's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's basically a strategic framework that businesses can use to really set your vision and where you're trying to go, like your 1 year, 3 year, 10-year plan. And then where it's really powerful is it helps you break it down into quarterly goals that help you get traction against, the longer term goals. So I came upon this right around the time that I was like, okay, we're having success here, but how do we really grow? And what, I'm this business owner, but I didn't go to school to become an entrepreneur. So I need to get more informed about how to run a company and all the things that one needs to be thinking about. So that was a big turning point for us of setting that longer term vision and then having those goals against it. And now that EOS system is just super infused, into our organization. I will say probably true for, every business, that another significant moment or turning point was COVID. Our business contracted for a good maybe year and a half. And we leaned really into our values to really get and keep the team in a positively dynamic place. Because it was tough, right? There were so many dynamics about it, personal and professional. It was just a super, chaotic time. And I just remember thinking, every time I would think, what do we do? I would look at the values and I'd find the answer somewhere in the values. So that too, I think was, I knew our values were important. That was a turning point of realizing that they actually are our lifeblood.
Mm-hmm. And what you talked about, kind of, you didn't go to school to be a business owner. You went to school to do, what you're good at doing.
Marketing, right?
Yeah. A lot of people say that, a lawyer will say, I was an expert in the law, and then I started my own firm, and I realized, I knew about 20% of what I needed to know. Was at what point did you realize, I'm good at all this stuff, but I don't know about running this company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think once I started hiring people. I think that was when I felt that, really high level of responsibility, like I'm responsible for these people's lives and I better know what I'm doing. And that's when I started to really go to school on what does it take to run a healthy business. Another aspect that has been very instructive in that space is I belong to Vistage, which is a peer-based business owner group. And so that really helps you. So between that and EOS, that's been my curriculum, if you will, in learning how to be an informed and stronger business owner. And then, anytime we make mistakes, I make mistakes, I try to really steep in what went wrong and what did we learn. And that way we don't have to make the same mistake again. So that's been really helpful too.
Do you have a mistake, maybe, I guess, that would be memorable enough to have it serve as a really an important lesson during the lifespan of Noetic?
I mean, I probably made them all. I think that one, I would say more of a blind spot. I wish that we had uncovered and articulated our values sooner. I think they would have helped us in our hiring process if we had them earlier in, like in the earlier days. I would say the other one that comes to mind the most is the importance of diversifying. We have great diversification when it comes to industry. We're not industry specific. So if, healthcare is soft, it's okay. If retail is soft, it's okay. We have, B2C, B2B, and ours is more of a functional expertise. However, if we get one client that is too big in our portfolio, it leaves us vulnerable. And we did have a situation like that pre-COVID with a global healthcare company. It was too big versus everything else we were doing. And it was risky. And lo and behold, they had to put everything on hold when COVID happened. And that was a financial hit that we just weren't going to recover from in the short run. Now they're back as a client now, but I should have planned for that sooner. And I should have gone harder after not having them as big in our portfolio as they were.
As I mentioned when I introduced you, you are also an adjunct professor at Georgetown, your alma mater. How did that come about, and what do you like most about doing that?
So I think at heart, I always, have gravitated to teaching. I mean, teaching and training are pretty much the same thing. My mom's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my dad taught. So I love being in the room, and I love helping people connect dots and feel safe to be able to learn and to kind of open up their curiosity. So we did a big brand initiative for Georgetown, which got me pretty deep into new relationships there with a lot of the administration and some of the faculty. And that really got me thinking about it some years ago. And so I asked my key client one day, I said, what would you think about, my being an adjunct? And he was like, that's a fabulous idea. I'll make the call today.
Nice.
So it happened like that. Now the program that I teach in is in the continuing studies, and it's just a marvelous program. Huge shout out to Wendy Sajak, who runs it. These are students who are doing a 2-year program. They're typically 20-somethings now coming from all over the world. And it's an integrated marketing program. And I teach in the course called Capstone, which is the last class they take. And they have to put all of it together by getting a client. The client is pro bono, but they get an actual client and they have to use all of the things they've learned. So they do market research, they set a strategy, they have to present to the client at the end. So it's very practical, and it's really exciting to watch them all connect the dots.
And I'm guessing they can use kind of that, whatever they do as a tool for helping them get another job, like this is what I've done, like a portfolio type thing.
Exactly. So sometimes, it would be, they all have advisors, sometimes the advisors end up, helping them or hiring them. Sometimes the client that they, get and they do the pro bono work for. Some of them are in positions and they aren't looking for a new opportunity, but I would say most of them are looking out for new opportunities, which is why they want to get this added degree.
Sure. So you've written a book as well. It's called How Senior Marketers Scale the Heights. What led you to write that?
Yeah. So it's embarrassing, but I'll tell you anyway. I wanted to write a book since I was a little kid. I used to take Elmer's glue and bind my little stories together and, put my name on it. So I always wanted to be an author. So it was definitely one of those life dream things. I got to a certain point in my career that I felt like I wanted to give back to this marketing community that had been so good to me. I was kind of at this space of what are you waiting for on writing this book that you always knew that you would? Let's get going. So what I did is I interviewed over 50 senior marketers, and I basically tell how to scale the heights through their words. So I used those in-depth interviews to really codify around the theories and the themes in the book.
Wow, sounds great. So who would benefit the most from reading it, and why?
Who would benefit most is anyone who has interest in marketing, whether they're, new at it or all the way up to the highest levels. I also have been told by non-marketers that there's a lot of leadership guidance in it. So I think that anyone who is interested in leveraging the what I call the art and the science sides of their skill sets, it has relevance for. Specifically in the book, there's the art and science assessment, which you talked about in your intro. So the art and science assessment it's an actual like quiz that you take, and it gives you a score and helps you know whether you're art leaning or science leaning, and then gives you a whole toolkit around how you can strengthen, the side where you may be weaker, or if you're balanced in the middle, how you can continue to hone that. And we now do trainings in that for organizations as well. We do, day-long or series of trainings, helping them identify at an individual level and at a team level, where are they strong, where, do they have the opportunity areas, and then what can they do to strengthen. So it's pretty practical. Sometimes I've also had some more senior marketers say to me that when they read it, it's kind of like therapy, because, hearing the wisdom and a little bit, the struggles of other senior marketers makes them feel like they're not alone.
Yeah. Was there any kind of big, I don't know if it's surprises is the right word, maybe takeaways that you got as you interviewed all of these people and then you applied it toward writing the book?
Yeah, I think I definitely didn't go in with a predetermined notion of how they go about what I call scaling the heights, being so successful. I let it really bubble up. I would say that the most surprising, interesting aspect was what I call all tradesness. So senior marketers, to be successful at that most senior level, you have to be really good at being a generalist. And being a generalist in our world is usually not, it doesn't really get the love and the respect, right? There's that, old adage, jack of all trades, but it's always followed by
master of none.
Master of none, right? Which is a criticism. However, the full quote, and that was Shakespeare, that full quote is jack of all trades, master of none, but so much better than master of one. So Shakespeare knew, and these senior marketers know, that it really is about availing yourself of being like a really adept learner and not knowing a little about a lot, which would just make you, I don't know, a hack, but knowing a lot about a lot and being really good at learning, because the marketing landscape is ever changing. So you really can't go into any position as you're rising through the ranks and know it. You have to always be adding on these different aspects. So the learning itself is how one gets to be that really strong generalist. So I think that was probably the most interesting, if not surprising, thing that came out.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Anything else we should know about the book?
It's available on Amazon. That's always helpful to know. And the other thing I would mention about it is that the original book I wrote in 2018, and then this book that just launched is a new edition, because I went back and interviewed a bevy of some of the senior marketers I had interviewed before and some new ones. Given everything that's happened in the last 3 years, I wanted to see what they felt was still true and what was newly true. And so that's what the new edition has.
I've heard from book authors that it can be a pretty gut-wrenching experience to write a book. You sit down, some days it takes 4 hours to even start working. Did you feel that, or did it come pretty easily?
I felt that. Yeah. It had chapters with like high points and low points. The research, which was the first chapter, was so exciting and fun. I mean, great to talk to all these senior marketers. And then I had all this fodder, and then I, built it into themes. It got heavy as I tried to really get it into the full prose of the book. So I got a bit stuck during that time. And yeah, making the time. I did a lot of my writing on airplanes. I can just concentrate on the plane like no other place. I don't turn on my Wi-Fi. I just put my head down. So that was really helpful. Getting an editor earlier on is also helpful. Somebody you can like bounce ideas off of, share messy chapters with, not waiting, till later on. I found super helpful. But, Chad, the least favorite part for me, and I really learned about myself, was that last mile where you have to check every word, and you have help, right? You have a proofreader, you have an editor, but at the end of the day, it's your call. So, every comma, every period, every whatever, the buck stops with you, and then it's going to go to print. And like, if there's a typo in there, it's on you. So I thought I was detail oriented, but I realized that I'm not detail oriented to that level. I was like, I just want to be done. Let's be done. So it's a journey. I have a dear friend who's a writer for Hollywood, and she said to me before I started the book, she said, my best advice to you is don't do it unless you feel you must, because it's hard. Mm-hmm. And I think that is good advice. Like if you have enough passion, you'll get through it. You'll persevere through. If it's just like a passing thought and you think it might be fun, like maybe write a blog.
Yeah. Not an entire book.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Well, it sounds great. I have one more question for you, but first, I guess just, tell us the name of the book and how people can find it, and also how people can find out more about Noetic Consultants.
Yes, great. Thank you for saying that. So the book is How Senior Marketers Scale the Heights. And then when you put that into Amazon, you'll want to make sure that you see the edition where you see my face on it holding up the old book. So you're not buying the old edition. The subline is what is still true, more true, and newly true. So that's kind of the subheader. And then for Noetic, our site is www.noeticconsultants.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Instagram. And for anyone listening, thank you so much for listening. And I do think and hope that if you have interest in leadership and marketing, that the book is not a difficult read, because it's so many of, the words of the marketers themselves. And I think there's a lot of practical help in there.
Last question for you. What, you're pretty busy. You got a lot going on. What are a few of the daily rituals that you find most important?
Oh, yeah. I love this question. So I'm a big early morning person, and I have kind of my own version, but I subscribe to the Miracle Mornings methodology. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like you take an hour and you do 10 minutes meditation, 10 minutes journaling, 10 minutes exercise, etc. I don't do it exactly like that, but I do sit down most mornings. I meditate, I read, I pray, I exercise. I exercise when I'm done with all that, and I journal. And that helps me get my head on. Very importantly, I'm also drinking coffee as I'm doing these things. So it's just quiet time where I get my head together. I always capture my gratitude. 3 things I'm going to focus on that day, and 1 thing I'm going to let go of. So that's just become a really important ritual for me, because it's a busy life, and you can get a very busy brain. And I find that getting my head straight first thing in the morning brings me tremendous peace and joy, ultimately.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds great. Hey, Nancie, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time and for all of your insights and your stories. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I just love being here. I appreciate the conversation, and you're taking the time, Chad.
Absolutely. So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.